Twisted Metal is a series of car combat games that started way back on the PlayStation 1 in 1995, with the first two games being considered classics and the second being treated as one of the best games on the system. It's a series born from a team spearheaded by a man who really wanted to blow up cars in a busy highway and heavily inspired by heavy metal and rock and roll. But after the first two games came out, the original dev team behind the series, Single Track, left to work on another racing game and another car combat game. This led 99 Studios to take the helm for 3 and 4, which didn't get well received by the fans or even the original team. What made 2 have a lot of charm was while it was campy and really stupid at points,
beaches, babes, farm animals!
There were unsettling character endings, or bits of dark and sometimes black comedy that would stand out amidst the destruction of brightly colored cars while the metal music plays in the background. This is something 99 Studios failed to understand with 3 and 4. Those came something extremely outlandish character designs, horrible character endings, and the inclusion of characters which made everything look like a colorful parody of the game prior.
Pizza Boy! You have won the Twisted Metal contest! What is it you desire? Yo, what up, ST? Check it, drop a player in a bucket, heck, trip down.
In 99, most of the team behind the first two games went to found a new company, Incognito Entertainment, with their first project being the 5th game in the Twisted Metal series, and the first game to use the next generation of the PlayStation. This game would go in the complete opposite direction 99 went of the series. The title was released in 2001, entitled Twisted Metal Black. Black, while staying true to the car combat formula the series was founded upon, aimed more of the dark and macabre in terms of visual design, story, and characters. The rock music that blasts while blowing up the Eiffel Towers replaced with bombastic orchestral music in the bleak suburbs. Instead of 2 stoners, you get a man whose eyes and tongue were removed. But we haven't gone to that yet. A core focus the team had with Black was the characters and the stories attached to them. Almost every character resides in the Blackfield Asylum, with their bios acting as a diagnosis. These characters also now have an introductory and middle cutscene alongside their endings to further build them into proper characters with a tale to tell. As a demonstration of how these stories are told and the style they convey, get on your knees as I quickly tell a tale of 2 men. One the Asylum dubbed as an extremely dangerous lost cause, and the other being a fiercely aggressive man whose treatment required isolation and horse tranquilizers. These are the tales of Needles Kane and No Face. Now let's begin the Twisted Metal tournament.
When the lights are low in this place, you get plenty of time for thinking.
Both stories begin in the ever so lovely Blackfield Asylum, where our characters acting as humble narrators talking of their current feelings locked up inside that padded room, with No Face acting very soft-spoken and calm, while Needles is a tad more, let's say, agitated, with that constant flame burning on his head.
Must have been years I was left alone in that darkness. But when you look like I do, it's probably for the best. The old man's curse was beginning to piss me off. But then one day, he showed up. Calypso, he called himself. It was a stupid name. I wanted to kill him there and then, but he made me an offer.
Calypso enters their padded cell and invites Sarf 2 into the Twisted Metal contest, a blood sport like no other. Cars, missiles, machine guns, fire, destruction, and chaos. Why would someone even participate in such a contest that can very easily take their lives? Calypso is a man of many talents, one of them being the ability to grant the wish of the winner's choosing. It can be anything, from not making Needles a portable Bunsen burner to helping No Face find and get back at the man who made him earn that name.
I just wanted to find the son of a bitch who destroyed my life. How could I refuse?
And thus, we are thrusted into the car combat arena of Twisted Metal, with our first level being a rundown junkyard. With every level loading screen, we get unique dialogue for the character currently in control, quickly diving into their current thoughts before the carnage starts. And when it starts, floor it. The game is harsh and will rarely give you the moment to breathe, when all of our drivers are around, even some of the more open maps. Your first goal with any fight to the death is to pick up some weapons, and boy are the vehicles armed with the best devices a psychopath could ever want. We got various missiles, machine guns, gas cans, and new type of weapon, skill shot weapons, which as the name implies, require far more precision to land than any other weapon, but make up for it by being some of the most damaging weapons you can pick up. There are also special weapons, which are not picked up, but are earned over time. These vary on the vehicle. For example, with Sweet Tooth, we can transform into a mech-like vehicle and wreak havoc with a barrage of missiles. Or with Crazy 8, we can surround the car in electricity, shocking anyone that gets in our way. A lot of specials are just stronger variations of pre-existing weapons, but some are unique from one another, with their efficiency ranging from one of the most powerful attacks to completely useless. There are also special inputs you can perform, like a free shot or a protective shield, but if you don't have the manual, you would have no idea of them even existing. Speaking of, the manual adds more charm to No Face, since almost all of it is written from his perspective, and it shares some little details, like Calypso's the one who modified everyone's cars to use such violent weaponry. And that No Face is using some heightened senses shit to drive around, even though he has no eyes. So what about the arenas this contest takes place in? Well, in terms of colors, they are all muddy and bleak. But we do have some nice locales with great level variation. We've got a prison that opens up more and more, allowing extra combatants to enter the fray, a large suburban area to destroy, my personal favorite stage being the drive-in theater, where giving a pure rush of adrenaline from start to finish, with it sporting the smallest arena size. Each stage hosts a collection of destructible objects and shares some secrets, like a hidden cube unlocking levels in the split-screen deathmatch, or in some stages, an unlockable character. These unlockable characters are honestly a bit too cryptic to find. I'll use the junkyard as an example. In the junkyard, we can drive up here, and with the right timing we can fire a missile at this plane flying across. And if we wait a bit after firing it, it crashes, unlocking a hidden area filled with goodies and the first unlockable character. You can tell this game was made in a pre-9/11 world with the plane crash, as the PAL version, which was released after those events, had the ability to shoot the plane down completely removed, causing the secret area to be unlocked from the start of the level. The PAL version has a ton of censorship, as it removes almost every story element from the game, from the pre-level dialogue to all of the cutscenes. They even removed the ability to run over screaming drivers that are running away from the wreckage. That is their burning vehicle. And that affects gameplay, since if you hit them, you get more health. With the battle at the junkyard over, we get a choice where the next blood path will take place. There are multiple sections where you can get this option, so it helps with constant replaying to get all the endings. However, there are some stages that must be done on every playthrough, like the junkyard, and our first boss, Minion. Minion is the winner from last year's contest, and when you look at what he's driving, you can understand why. He's a beast of an opponent where precise aim and quick turning is key to avoiding his most powerful attacks, while also harming him with yours. Once Minion is defeated, the characters we are following will be knocked unconscious, allowing them to think. Let's see what No Face has to say.
In the nut house, I was always drugged up. I never thought about what happened to me, but now that I was out, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was a boxer. You never heard of me. I was strictly small time. One night, I went up against this hotshot fighter from out of state. I never even saw him coming. I got tore to pieces before the end of the first round. My jaw was shattered. My nose was broke. I was a mess. And some of the guys from the gym said they knew this surgeon who could fix me up, good as new. Maybe there were better doctors in town, but none that I could afford. Besides, I'd heard this guy was a big fan of the fights. Too bad old Doc made the mistake of betting on me that night.
$20,000, McCutcheon. $20,000 I lost on you tonight.
As I went under, all I could hear was the scraping sound of the Doc's blade and this blaring opera music he played while he worked. When I woke up, my face felt like it had gone 15 rounds with a semi-truck. The Doc did a good job. I'll give him that. From what I hear, I went a little crazy. They say I busted up the hospital trying to find the guy. In the process, I tore up 6 innocent people. But now that I'm out, there ain't no place for the Doc to hide.
Needles' talk is again more aggressive than our boxer friend.
All my greatest achievements flashed before my eyes. The scale of what I'd done, the sheer volume of people I'd killed, it was breathtaking. When they captured me, the only thing I could think was, what a waste. All those people I hadn't killed yet. Come the night of my execution, there must have been over 1,000 people gathered outside to watch me fry. I was upset about that. There should have been more. I remember...
Doesn't matter. We still got 3 more rounds of the tournament to win. While driving, the screams of drivers, the explosions, and the engines of cars going by will echo across the battlefield. And as mentioned previously, the music is orchestral, but is also now dynamic, with it changing from bombastic orchestral when in a fight, and striking ambient affairs when all alone hunting for another foe. It works really well even if you don't hear the ambient tracks too often, since enemies will always want you dead. The audio and presentation as a whole is really well produced, and helps build the oppressive setting the game provides. After the elaborate prison and chaotic drive-in, we are at the final round of the contest, the sky-high skyscrapers, an arena where reckless driving can mean a quick death. But once all drivers are finally removed from the tournament, we got one more fight left, before the wish is granted.
You're in violation of Midtown City Code 4432. Step out of your vehicle and surrender peacefully. Time's up.
Warhawk, a police attack chopper and our final boss. He's no problem though after the battle at the skyscrapers. This is just a simple fight, one of patience and precision. Once Warhawk is defeated, the end cutscene for the character chosen plays. Now let's see if Calypso will hold his end of the bargain and grant the wish of our dear No-Face.
So what do you know? I was the winner. Calypso's contest was over and I was the champ. And true to his word, the man delivered the goods. I got my prize. He even had a special bonus lined up for me. It fit perfect, like we was meant to be together. I had seen fear in a man's eyes before, but this was different. This was special. I think that doctor, he knew payback was going to be brutal. It's funny, After all these years, I still got some snap in that left hook of mine. You know, that was the first time I ever knocked someone out with one punch.
No Face got what he wanted, but what about Needles?
He offered me a vial. He said inside it held the blood of a man who'd cursed me on the night of my execution. He told me if I drank it, my curse would be over. But he also said, if I ever returned to my killing ways, the antidote would wear off, and the curse would come back to haunt me. I had to decide. It took me all of 10 seconds. Let's face it, boys and girls. A man has to have his priorities. I killed Calypso about as well as I ever killed anyone.
I think he's going to be just fine. Afterwards, a credit sequence will roll, but I recommend skipping down the first playthrough, as it shows a montage of all the cutscenes, and while it's a great montage cut to an amazing song, it spoils way too many visuals that should be viewed in their proper context. So now you do it all again. All 8 stages, both bosses, just with a different character. You can select a different stage at some points, but the storyline structure is the same for every starting character. You have an introduction, a flashback after Minion, and an ending after Warhawk. The only exceptions to this are the unlockable characters, which don't have flashbacks, and only one even has an introduction. Their stories are a bit of a letdown. Now, completing the game with every character will unlock a new one to play around with, but this one has no cutscenes, only loading screen text masked in a code. Now, if you don't want this secret spoiled alongside spoilers of the stories I haven't shown, skip to here. 3, 2, 1. Before I tell the secret, a couple years back, early versions of the cutscenes were released. I'll provide a link in the description, but a lot of it are just in-game storyboards or have different audio. But there are some interesting differences. Preacher's ending shows him drowning a baby, and Warthog's driver and ending would belong to Warhawk, which was a cut vehicle. Anyway, the secret. So the text I showed is not actually a part of the game, and is in fact in a completely different encryption than Minion's dialogue. This is more simple, just a basic letters to numbers ordeal. The message translates as follows. I do not think this is real. I must speak in code or he will discover me. We are trapped in his head. This is how he sees the world, how Sweet Tooth sees his life. It is not real. All of us are trapped in his head. I miss the old, colorful world. We will return to our old world one day. In the real world, my name is Marcus Kane. The secret to Black is that it is not the hard reboot many thought it was, but a look inside the deranged mind of its most iconic character, as Marcus Kane is not a relative of Needles, but his alter ego, his personality before he went mad and drove that rundown truck. There are a couple ways to look into this. One would be that all of the characters are people that Needles has killed in the past, or they are how he sees certain parts of the world. Mr. Grimm is his view on war, Preacher his view on religion, Bloody Mary his view on love, and so forth. Both have arguments for and against, but I feel it's something you shouldn't look too deep into. Just remember that everything you saw was the creation of a man named Needles Kane.
Now that I'm free, I'm going to be the greatest of all time.
Now a conclusion can be done here, boys and girls, but there is more to this tale. A sequel to the game was planned, one with the subtitle of Harbor City, and some parts of it was included in the PS2 release of the next major release, dubbing that content as Twisted Metal Lost. There are other bonuses here too, like a documentary about the series, and the lost endings of the first game, which everyone should watch because they are great.
Oh, that's strange. It tastes like... Mr. Kane, the world is now your oyster. I need a driver. Someone to travel the world and search for new drivers for each year's competition. You'll never die. And you'll drive forever. What do you say, Mr. Kane? Sounds good to me, baby.
And a very early version of a feature meant for Harbor City, where you can run around as everyone's favorite ice cream truck driver. In this, you will find concept art and dev notes, but now is time to talk about Harbor City. We begin with a text scroll. I'll give an abridged version. Following the release of Black and the PS1 spin-off Small Brawl, work had begun on Harbor City, a sequel to Black. The main innovation with Harbor City was to have levels that interconnected, thus creating a seamless open-world Twisted Metal game. But the game was cancelled after 6 key members died in a plane crash. 2 years to the day of the plane crash, a letter was sent with a pleading that work that had been done should be released to the public. The odd thing about the note was that it was signed by the 6 deceased designers. Even though it was considered a sick joke internally, the work was released to the public in the form of Lost. The interconnected levels were removed, and there are no new stories for the characters. The core gameplay of Twisted Metal is still there, and if you complete Lost, you will see the letter, and if you do so on hard, you will see the entirety of it, revealing the secret it hides. So we are now on a ghost hunt. Just have to set the game to hard and off we go. But before we do so, they said there were no new stories written, but there are short epilogues for every character. Some of these are really cool and interesting, and others are really stupid. Since we went for the tournament as No-Face, I'll read out his epilogue in full. No-Face is obsessed with rebuilding his mutilated mug, tracking and killing those he deems evil. He steals the eyes and tongues of his victims. He struggles to create a new face for himself, one that will allow him to smile at his baby daughter without making her burst into tears. After 8 years, still no luck. Now let's drive around in his age-old stock car and find the secret that Lost hides. Gameplay-wise, it plays very similar to Head-On, as Lost is bundled with it, so it makes sense it's using the same mechanics. Because of this, the game is a bit faster. There are clear indications on how much damage you've done, special attacks are easier to perform, and the game is slightly easier compared to Black. Some weapons have been adjusted, and we have a brand new one, the remote bomb. I like it. For levels, we got another suburban area, this time with a bowling alley, a pizza place, and a movie theater playing Sphincter Man. A big stadium that doesn't have much going for it, and a carnival, which is all the things a carnival needs. Pirates, merry-go-rounds, and Lobster Man. He's based on a real person. He killed people. There's also a 4th level named the Death Port, which is unlocked after completion. It's neat, but I just want to see the letter. So we finish up the carnival, and we get our letter. Now it is time to read it in full and decipher what type of secret it holds. We are disappointed to hear of your decision to keep the world from seeing the last of our work. We beg you, show them all what we have done. Show them our last earthly deeds. If you doubt our existence, look to the dark past for proof that we are who we say. For in this dark past, you will find proof that we know what the future will bring. We then get a bunch of signatures that I cannot read, followed by the last paragraph, which is blurred out if we didn't do this on hard. And do not forget, the truth lies in the greenery of Paris. To the left, the truth is revealed. This is why we have come back, to let you know what awaits. So our ghost hunt has turned into a treasure hunt. But a plane ticket to Paris is a bit costly. Thankfully, the letter held had another hit. It has repeated mentions of a dark past, and that documentary that is bundled with this game is called The Dark Past. So we just have to fast forward to them talking about the Eiffel Tower falling in the second game, and to the left there is some numbers. These are scattered across the documentary, and if we use the deciphering method of converting numbers to letters, we get the message, Twisted Metal is coming to PS3. So 6 game designers didn't die in a plane crash, but it was a way to interest people to figure out that the next game in the series was coming to the next generation of hardware. This was 4 years before the game's actual release, and 2 before the official announcement at E3. The game itself, well, I haven't played it personally, so I cannot judge it for its gameplay, but its story can be a different tale later down the line. But some of you may be wondering the somewhat unnecessary question, why did this game get canned? I have some ideas. The most likely of my 2 ideas is the interconnected levels was very ambitious for the time given the hardware. Now that can bring the question of, why didn't they just scrap the idea but kept the levels? That might lead to my second theory, which is the sequel's tone. Some of these epilogues are very different in tone compared to the tales of Black, and while Black did have some humor here and there, some of these epilogues are very comical. You also got levels having writing like Sphincter Man. Maybe the sequel got cancelled due to the team unable to recapture the tone of Black, which makes sense, because the next game they made was Head On, which is quite comical. Too much if you ask some people. So that's Lost out of the way. Let's go back to Black and conclude. Black is my favorite game in the series. Its stories and characters strengthened the game so well that I was let down that Head On went back to just ending cutscenes. The twisted, the bleak, and the black macabre stories will never leave my head, and I hope this has enticed you to explore the dark world for yourself, and see the images that I saw many years ago that will never leave my own twisted mind. Stay tuned for the next video, where I talk about a Polish game. I see a red door and I want it painted black. No colors anymore, I want them to turn black. I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer clothes. I have to turn my head until my darkness goes. I see a line of cars and they're all painted black, with flowers and my love both never to come back.